Hello YouTube, what's up? It's me, Amaxter. We're back with Behind the Mod Season 2, Episode 9, with CovertJaguar, who is the creator of RailCraft. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, so you've had a really long history modding for Minecraft. Where did that all begin?
That was back in beta 1.7.3. I was waiting for the 1.8 update. And since they were changing the world gen, I kind of got tired of playing my world because I knew I wanted to start a new one. So I started poking at modding since I had some Java experience just to see how hard it was. And I kind of didn't stop. I actually didn't get to play 1.8 because I was too busy modding.
And what were your first efforts of modding like?
Well, I started with detectors in RailCraft and control tracks and one-way tracks and locking tracks. And that was how the first version of the mod, that's what was in it.
And what made you want to do Rails?
Well, I would been attempting to build a mine that used minecarts for getting around. And because of the way my world was, I'd added mods, so I had to travel pretty far to get to the new spawned areas. And I was doing all this with minecarts. And I kind of wanted a way to send loads of stuff back to my base, but that wasn't really possible with just vanilla or any of the mods I had. So
Yeah, and I think now RailCraft is obviously a lot different. What do you think were some of the big fundamental changes you made early on in making it more of a fully featured tech mod?
Probably when I started adding the various crafting trees with the factory machines and stuff, the multi-blocks and things, I guess. Um, Most of that was added to make the crafting more interesting generally.
Yeah, I think the multi-block stuff actually was one of the first mods that did that, and now we see a lot of mods with the whole assembling structures kind of thing. What do you think about that influence?
Well, the only other real multi-block structure before I started doing it was the IC2 nuclear reactor, which was a really basic version of a multi-block. But it definitely exploded after I introduced I think it was a coke oven first, especially the tanks. After I added the tanks, it really started exploded. A lot of people started adding it to their mods.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, and of course, there were other changes made in the general modding community that you also started to adopt. What were some of those?
That I started to adopt. Well, I guess there was fluids from BuildCraft. I was one of the early adopters of that, I guess, um, which eventually made it into Forge and is now pretty much universal. And oh, there's chunk loaders too. I got those, which another early adopter there. Um, I worked with CPW as he was implementing them to help define the use cases and stuff.
Huh. And I think pretty sure RailCraft was one of the first kind of big mods to be included in stuff like TechHit and FTB. Did being in a mod pack affect the development of the mod?
Um, well, I was never very fond of TechIt, and they were never very fond of me. Uh, but we won't really go too much into that. Well, I mean, mod packs are cool. I'm okay with that. But as for, I usually just kind of do my own thing, what I want to do. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to what other people are doing too much. So
So it's kind of for your own playstyle.
pretty much, I'm very much a hardcore survivalist who likes very well balanced games. I generally, when I play, I build my own packs and everything. So.
So what kind of mods do you generally see working well with RailCraft?
Well, historically, there's BuildCraft and Forestry have always gone well. There's a lot of IC2 integration in RailCraft. Um, and there's RF integration now as well. As for other stuff, there's some smaller things like cart livery, which adds painted carts, and RailCraft cosmetic editions and other things, which expand on the carts. And it worked pretty good with Steve's carts back in the day. Traincraft, not so much, since they're kind of incompatible with all sizes and everything. But
Huh. So it's kind of you find it working well with other style kind of tech or I guess cart focused mods. But
yeah, generally, I mean, there's not too much. I try and design things so that they'll work without any special effort on the parts of other developers. So,
yeah, and things have changed a little bit because recently you released a beta for 110 because you're now porting to that. So what changes have you seen in the community around you for 110?
um, the different power systems is a big question right now, and that's kind of shaking out at the moment with the new Forge Energy and Tesla and RF support issues and everything. As for other stuff, I mean, the 110 code base is nice. I like it now that I'm mostly done with the update, but there's definitely some new ideas coming in, which is nice to see.
Do you have like big opinions on stuff like Forge Energy?
Not a huge fan because I kind of am of the opinion that the reason we're seeing so many new energy systems pop up is because RF's future is questionable. And replacing that with an officially supported version is kind of a step backward, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a little weird. We had Tesla, which looked like it was going to be the thing, and then there was some other stuff, and now there's Forge Energy. So I think the whole energy system thing is still up in the air at this point.
Very much so.
And are you gonna plan to just kind of adopt whatever people tend to use?
I haven't really decided yet. I'm kind of feeling like maybe I will move towards kind of my own stuff and just let them do their thing a little bit. I mean, I'll still have support with what I have, and maybe I'll add support for something else if it gets popular. But my stuff will mostly run on Charge or Steam, pretty much.
Hmm. So kind of be more independent.
Yeah, I'd like to add some actual Steam pipes and stuff. So,
That would be pretty cool. I know that with the 110 there is more. I guess you're making some changes to the mod, and of course when you port, some features change. How do you feel the port is right now? Like what have you changed, and what do you plan to change from the 1.7 version?
well, I've already completely rewritten how tracks work. So there's like 7 base types of track, and then you add track kits to them to make them into like boosters, locking tracks, and stuff. So that's all new, and that was quite a bit of work actually. Um, I also have some new signals types that I wanted to add, and I'm my current project right now is redoing the world gen a little bit. So there's some interesting stuff coming.
World gen regards to like ores or other new stuff?
Yeah, mostly the metal ores. I've redone how the poor ores spawn so that they spawn more in kind of organic shapes instead of clusters. I'm calling them mines now, but they have poor ore and standard ore in them, and they have kind of tentacles that stretch out over an area, and it's turning out pretty well.
That's pretty neat. And you reminded me, pour ores, that's kind of one of the RailCraft's famous things where, you get these little pieces that you have to turn into ingots. Is that kind of part of your appeal for hardcore gameplay?
Well, the main reason those exist is so that I can spread the ore thinner over an area so that it's not quite so sparse. So once you find pour ore, you'll find a lot of pour ore, basically. But there's been some discussion about adding ways to make it into standard ore and stuff, but I haven't decided on that yet.
Yeah. And overall, what do you think RailCraft's future looks like in terms of well, near future, like in 110 and 111? How are you gonna adapt to the coming changes to the vanilla Minecraft and just other mods?
Well, like the dual wielding stuff's kind of cool. I'm looking at making like the Firestone kind of combat capable as an offhand. So that's going to be interesting. And there's a lot of nice stuff coming from 110. At the moment, I've only basically got the tracks and the carts, and a few other things are basically ready. The switches and signals, that'll be in the next version, the next official 1.1 release of RailCraft, and then the factory blocks will be in, or 10.1, and the factory blocks will be in 10.2, and then that I'll have the aesthetic blocks in 10.3. So
Nice. And I don't want to be that person who asks for ETAs, but just in general, around when do you see it being near feature complete with the 1.7 version?
um well, it shouldn't be too long before I have the official release of RailCraft 10.0 out. And after that happens, it'll probably be probably at least 3 more months before I get there. So probably sometime this winter.
Huh. And shifting gears a little bit, you used to work on BuildCraft and Forestry, which are both being maintained by different people now, and both of those are mods that have had many different contributors over the years. But you were a pretty major one on both. How did you get involved in that? I guess in no particular order you can choose, but what got you involved in the first place with those mods?
Well, there were some of the first mods that I started playing with myself, and as a modder myself, I'd see issues, and so I'd take the issues to their issue trackers, and that's kind of how I got to know um, mainly Sir Sangir. Space Toad, I had a little bit of contact with him at first, but then that was about the time he left the community. So mostly it was I got to know Sir Sanger and started helping him out on bugs and stuff. And from there, it just kind of escalated until he kind of backed away from BuildCraft a little bit, and I just kind of filled the void at that point. So,
Huh. And were you just mechanically adding things or updating? What was your role in development?
well, BuildCraft was largely mostly code improvements and updating and fixing bugs. The code base when we started wasn't the most maintainable thing, so there was a lot of work to be done there.
And for Forestry?
Forestry, again, mostly bug issues, and again, Sir Sanger, he was active there a lot longer than he was in BuildCraft, but eventually he kind of faded off there. And again, I just kind of filled the void. But that didn't last very long because this wonderful person named Mez showed up shortly after that and started helping me. And he was completely awesome. And I basically didn't have to give him any input at all for him to do exactly what I would have done myself. So eventually he ended up taking the whole thing over, and he's been doing an awesome job with it. So
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think forestry is definitely kind of being reborn for 110 thanks to Mez, and that's pretty awesome to see. But on the BuildCraft side of things, I know that's being ported by Alex, I think. Um, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I haven't been paying too much attention. Things got a little rocky when Space Toad came back. He wasn't very friendly to those of us who had been maintaining the mod, so things kind of fell apart then. And then he left again, and then Ace took over, and then Alex came on board, and I'm not quite sure where it's at the moment. So I think they're working on a 110 version. I think the active development branch is on 110, but I don't think they ever released yet.
Hmm. So you've seen both of these mods kind of evolve and take on different owners over the years. What do you think that porting and just updating these mods like do you think they change over time or that they kind of try to stay the same way people remember them? How do mods like that evolve?
If you don't change, you will eventually get discarded by the wayside as being the old hat. Everything you do is done better by somebody else. So if you want to stay current, you have to keep adding stuff and innovating. So there's that. I mean, I generally just add stuff rather than change old things too much myself, but I've got a pretty loyal core following, and the mods pretty popular and widespread in terms of mod packs and stuff. So
So do you think that community involvement, like you mentioned, your following, has an influence on how you work on the mod since it's such a personal project, or do you kind of keep your vision?
um, I've got a group of several people who are very active in IRC, who I often bounce ideas off of, and they have a very large input in how the mod is the vision of the mod as it goes forward. So,
Huh. And what do you think of broader community stuff like that FTB subreddit, CurseForge, stuff that has kind of seen more, I guess, mainstream modded appeal, if that's a thing, recently? Like, what do you think that does for the community?
well, I think it's great. I visit the FTB Reddit for um fairly often. I don't go to the Forge forums too much, but there's usually some interesting Reddit threads going. So,
Yeah. Do you participate in that, or do you just kind of observe?
um, if it's relevant to RailCraft or an issue that I care about, I'll drop in and leave a comment or two. These days, I try to avoid the drama a bit. So,
Yeah, it's wise. Um, so you have been developing RailCraft. Have you ever thought of making a new mod?
um, there was some discussion the other day about making a RailCraft hardcore mod, which changes some vanilla mechanics to make minecarts more desirable. But generally, the way I see it is having two code bases means two dev environments, means two repositories, and basically twice the work. So it's much easier to just put it all into one mod.
So do you plan to like maybe make stuff more configurable or just kind of make sure it all fits in one umbrella?
Well, as mods go, you can't get much more configurable than RailCraft. There's a lot of development time spent on making sure you can disable any part of the mod you don't like. So,
Huh. Yeah, that the configuration I think is a pretty big thing. Uh, has that always been a thing in RailCraft, or is that more recent that you've kind of opened that up for whoever wants to tinker with that?
the configs.
Yeah, the configuration options.
Well, that it's been part of RailCraft for a very long time. I mean, we got the whole module system where you can disable whole chunks of the mod if you want, like the locomotives or trains or stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty much been there since who knows when.
But yeah, I think that's pretty good for mod packs and just anyone who wants to tweak that. It's great that when you have a mod split up into modules that you don't have to download individual jars for, like some mods, not gonna name call, but you know.
Yeah, I always hated doing that myself, so I said no, I'm not going to make my users do that. So, but yeah, the it's actually interesting because I've talked in person to some of these mod pack developers, and the interesting thing is a lot of them say they don't like changing the config settings because they feel like it changes the spirit of the mod or something like that. Which my response is to I spend way too much time on these stupid config options for you guys to ignore them. So
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Sometimes maybe they're just being lazy. I don't know, but yeah, it's nice that it's there for people to do because I'm sure some people take advantage of it. And speaking of utilizing stuff, what do you think some of the coolest builds or just creations you've seen with RailCraft?
oh, there's I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've seen servers that have um, railways covering the entire server, completely automated and everything. I've seen giant coke oven factories, all driven by minecarts, and it's crazy what some people have done. I mean, I myself am not the best signal designer, but there's some people out there who are a lot better at using signals to do stuff than I am.
Yeah, I think you can make some pretty elaborate kind of just either roller coasters or rides or factory setups with RailCraft. So you adopt CurseForge now, and you're also on Patreon, like lots of modders. What do you think of stuff like Curse Points and Patreon in terms of, I guess, motivating community support?
Well, the honest truth was, if that stuff wasn't there, I probably would not still be modding. That's basically what it is. I spend too much time on this stuff to not have that support. So,
And do you find that like just like setting up? Do you find that the community, this is something that you think has always kind of had the potential to be there? Do you think it's opened up new kind of ways for people to mod? How do you think it's changed things from the way they were before for you and just for the community in general?
well, it's nice that there's less oh, what's it called? Adfly links around, I guess. But it's definitely better than it was back in the day when only revenue you got was from AdFly.
Yeah.
But as for enabling new things, you have to be a pretty popular mod to really have an impact with that stuff, I think. So I don't know. There's a few mods out there that do, but I'm not really sure how much of an influence it has on things, really.
Well, there's always been stuff like Optifine and the Aether. They have their own systems. They're kind of independent for people who donate can get capes or special items. Have you ever kind of considered something like that, or do you already have a system sort of like that in place?
Well, if you are a high tier patron donor, you can get your own custom emblems added to RailCraft, which are basically little icons you can put on locomotives and item frames and things.
That's pretty neat, and also I guess kind of neat that it's there for everyone in the mod. Um, that's definitely a good way to show support.
Yeah, it's an interesting system. You get a little code and you can hand it out to people and then they enter it and then they can get your icon and
Pretty cool. Overall, I guess for general mod of Minecraft, where do you see it going in the near future? Because we did see Minecon a few weeks ago with 111, and like we've mentioned, new mods. There's stuff like JEI. Where do you see the modded community going?
Um, like I said, there's a lot of new ideas coming in. I've seen a lot of new mods in 110. Some of the older stuff is kind of dropped off and not being updated. And the newer mods that I'm seeing are generally a lot more polished than they used to be. As for the far future, I don't know. There's always a question about what Microsoft's going to do with their whole. They got the whole add-on thing going with the C# editions now. So
Yeah. The gist that I seem to be getting is that they're gonna let the Java version kind of continue and gradually get less involved with that as they focus on Windows 10 and that C# edition.
yeah, and what I heard through the grapevine, they kind of going to keep it as kind of the feature leader, innovative version, and focus on the other stuff. But they didn't really have any, as far as I know, they don't have any plans to shut it down now, but I guess we'll find out in a few months when the contract restriction on the employees ends.
Yeah, I find it really funny how lots of features probably, for all versions have not only come from the Java version, but just mods for the Java version, in many cases have inspired future features.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, we got horses and even the dual wielding was a mod and everything. So the modding definitely influences the Mojang.
For
Uh,
sure.
I mean, some of them hang out with us. So.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have people like Professor Mobius, who makes Wayla and also works at Mojang doing some stuff. So there also is some overlap there.
And he does not like roller coasters.
Oh, well, that's not good. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been awesome having you on. Any more closing thoughts?
No, it's been good. I mean, yeah, we'll have an official version of RailCraft out soon. It won't be feature complete, but we'll get there. I have plans to bring back everything that is currently missing. So,
Awesome. Thank you all you guys for watching. Again, thank you for coming on, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.
bye.